But Grandpa, if sin is the transgression of the law, as it says in 1 John 3 verse 4, in my KJV Bible, but in Romans 6 verse 14 the Apostle Paul said Christians are not under the law, but under grace. Also in Romans 4 verse 15 he said, where no law is there is no transgression. How then can I be accused of committing any sin, if I am not under the law, but under grace?
Shanilijanel. It is important to notice also that just after his Romans 6 verse 14 statement that Christians are not under the law, but under grace, the Apostle Paul still warned Christians against committing any sins. In so doing, he clearly indicated that another law different from the law of Moses was in existence. Also, in 1 Corinthians 9 verse 21, he mentioned that though he was not under the law of Moses, he was not without law to God, but was under the law to Christ. Despite this clear indication of another law, the 16th century church reformer, Martin Luther, was not diligent enough to check it out. Neither are most pastors today observant enough to understand and check out the law that the Apostle Paul alluded to. Significantly, in between Paul's statements in Romans 1 verse 5 that faith was presented for obedience to it, and chapter 3 verse 27, which speaks of the law of faith, in Romans 2 verse 13 Paul clearly said that it is only the doers of the law that shall be justified by God. This law clearly in reference to the law of Christ mentioned in Galatians 6 verse 2. So the other law that Paul alluded to and against which Christians commit sins is called faith. Despite this clear indication, Luther and many pastors today prefer to believe that in Paul saying that the believers in Jesus Christ are saved by grace through faith, or that the Christians are justified by faith, Paul was referring to personal faith. But in so teaching they deceive themselves and their congregations straight into hell. For salvation depends totally on obedience to Christ in terms of the believer fully adhering to the original doctrine of the gospel of Christ. This reality Paul himself clearly indicated in Romans 6 verses 16 to 17, noting that disobedience to the specific doctrine of the gospel leads to death. Sadly, the false teaching in the churches today relates to the lawlessness that Christ warned of in Matthew 7 verses 21 to 27, and that for this lawlessness he is going to reject many Christians, as he also has warned of in the said passage of Scripture. If there was no law to observe, Christ would not have warned of rejection for lawlessness.
Thanks for explaining it to me, Grandpa.